Hi, everybody. It's 4.2. The AP Psych CED calls it attitude formation and change, and we're going to call it something a little easier, identifying and understanding prejudice and discrimination. That's basically what it is all about. All right, so 4.2, and that's it for the week. 4.2 textbook reading and unit project packet. That's the lecture notes. Our goal is to analyze how stereotypes influence behavior and mental processes related to prejudice and discrimination. Probably something you've all experienced before. So a stereotype is a generalized belief about a particular category of people, often oversimplified and not based on direct experience. Stereotypes, here's a good vocab word right here. Stereotypes can help reduce cognitive load, right? Cognitive load just means like thinking heavy. We have a lot of thoughts in our head, and that's why biases happen. That's why something we'll learn later, system one thinking happens, and we're prone to make a lot of mistakes in our thinking because we have so many thoughts in our head. So of course, some of them are going to be, when we're trying to think quickly, we make mistakes. And a stereotype is that mistake. Often it's one form of mistake that our brain makes. Stereotypes can help reduce cognitive load by providing a quick, oversimplified way to categorize people and situations without the need for a detailed processing of every new piece of information. Oh, Asians are good at, can you fill in the blank? Fill in the blank, folks. Asians are good at blank. And we can talk about in class what you put here. But I bet most of you put the same exact word because it's just a quick way of thinking. It's a quick way to group an entire group of people. So I'm looking forward to hearing your answers. Confirmation bias is a tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms one's pre-existing beliefs. So you already believe something, so you'll ignore information that contradicts your belief. Okay? A gamer believes a certain character is overpowered, so they notice every time that character wins, but they don't notice when that character loses. Right? This is confirmation bias. You're ignoring contradictory information and you're only looking for the evidence that supports what you already believe. A student thinks they're bad at math, only remembers the times they struggled with homework while ignoring the times they solved problems correctly. Right? This is a story as old as time. Basically, anyone that thinks they're bad at math is this person. I've been there. So confirmation bias, you ignore contradictory evidence or evidence that goes against what you already believe, and you only look for and confirm information that supports your pre-existing belief. Belief perseverance. This is when all the evidence is, up against you and you're proved wrong, but you still believe something anyway. So people that think the earth is flat, that's belief perseverance. They've been given all the evidence that the earth is not flat, but they still believe the earth is flat, right? People that think climate change isn't real, they still think climate change isn't real, even though 99.9% of scientists say climate change is real. And there's just overwhelming evidence that the earth temperature and climate is changing. People still deny it. That's belief perseverance. The tendency to hold on to one's initial beliefs even after they've been shown to be false, often ignoring contradictory evidence presented. So confirmation bias, you don't even see the evidence that goes against your belief. Belief perseverance is you see the evidence and you just ignore it and you're like, nah, I'm right. Belief perseverance. It perseveres. Self-fulfilling prophecy is a really fun one and a really good term to know. It's when a belief about a situation or a person leads to actions that make the belief come true. What? Believing something makes it come true. That's right. If you believe you're bad at math, well, you're going to continue to be bad at math. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. And other people can have prophecies for you that affect your life. So here's an example of a teacher. A teacher believes a student is especially gifted and gives them more attention and harder material. This is also really what happens with high-level students. Student rises to the challenge and actually performs better. So the teacher prophesized that this student is really smart and gifted, so they gave them a bunch of extra challenging work, and the student became more gifted. Right? Self-fulfilling prophecy. Someone fears their partner will leave them, so they become clingy and jealous. Well, now their partner is going to leave them. That's a self-fulfilling prophecy. Your belief like creates reality, self-fulfilling prophecy. One of my favorite terms in psychology, and I hope it becomes yours as well. All right, prejudice, everybody's favorite. It's an unjustifiable and usually negative attitude towards a group. Okay, so here's the difference between prejudice and discrimination. This will be a lot easier to understand. Prejudice is an attitude or a belief, right? You think a certain group is bad for some reason, right? I think NLCS students are blank. I think Japanese people are blank. It's just an attitude, right? It's just a thought that you have. That's called prejudice. And discrimination is an action or a behavior towards somebody based on your prejudice. So this is just cognition. You're just thinking something bad about certain groups. And discrimination is when you actively treat someone unfairly, right? So you treat somebody differently because of the group that they're in. That's called discrimination. So next time you catch yourself treating someone differently because they're in a certain group, gender, ethnicity, race, age, that's discrimination. Implicit attitudes. Implicit attitudes, this is like, I don't know if you've ever heard of the term microaggression. It's like, people can kind of be racist without knowing that they're racist, right? They can, can they? I don't know. Can people be racist without knowing that they're racist? That would be an implicit attitude. Unconscious beliefs or feelings that influence a person's behavior and perceptions without their awareness. So a doctor consciously values all patients, but unconsciously takes women's reports of pain less seriously than men's, based on true story. It's based on true research. A teacher consciously believes all students are equal, okay, but unconsciously expects students from elite soul neighborhoods or top academies to perform better. Story as old as time, right? Implicit attitude. So it's like a unconscious attitude. You're not even aware of the attitude. Just world phenomenon. A just world phenomenon. It's also a cognitive bias because of cognitive load. We've got too many thoughts in our head, so it's just easy to think this. We have a tendency to think that the world is just, the world is right, the world is fair. The world is fundamentally fair, so we rationalize injustice or misfortune as deserved. Ew. So when a person is in a car accident, we tend to think they were probably driving recklessly. We don't take into consideration random chance. We're just like, yeah, okay, they were in an accident, they're probably doing something wrong. Oh, they got arrested, they probably committed a crime. Oh, the student failed, he probably didn't do any work. Why is it a he? Why am I assuming he? Is that an implicit attitude towards male students? It just happened. Poverty. People may assume poor people are lazy rather than recognizing structural issues like unequal access to education and jobs. I mean, yeah, most people, at least in my country, most people tend to be have this belief, it seems. Outgroup homogeneity bias. This is another banger. It's another one of my favorite terms in psychology. Outgroup homogeneity bias. Very good to know. You got to know this. Guaranteed to be on all future tests. The tendency to see members of an outgroup as more similar to each other than they really are, often perceiving them as less varied than members of one's own group. So my best example here is, here's my statement. This is what it means. They're all the same, we're all different. When we think about SJA, we're so diverse. We've got lots of different types of students, people from all different countries, mostly one country, but that's fine. They're all from all different areas, mostly from one area, but that's also fine. Everybody's different. We're unique. So we got jocks, we got people that like sports, and then we got musicians, we got amazing actors and actresses and artists and psychologists. We're very different. But when we think of NLCS students, for example, my favorite example, when we think of NLCS students, we think of them as this is an activity we'll have to do in class to demonstrate outgroup homogeneity bias, but we tend to think of other groups as all the same, right? Japanese people are blank. American people are blank. And you tend to clump them all together in as one group. American people? What do you mean American people? There's so many different types of American people. It's a huge country, right? but we tend to group them all together before we make some blanket statement. That's outgroup homogeneity bias. And we don't really do it with our own in-groups. In-group bias, the tendency to favor and extend loyalty to members of one's own in-group over those in other groups, often leading to preferential treatment and judgment. Okay, obviously, national pride, people tend to prefer their own country. People tend to root for their country in the World Cup, etc. It's an in-group bias. But also, the micro of that would be classroom group projects. Students give high students give higher peer evaluation scores to friends within their circle than to equally hardworking classmates from outside of their group. Yeah, I mean, everybody's been in a group project before. Yeah, it's called in-group bias, helping out your friends, you know, of course. The mere exposure effect. Wow, we're just blasting a lot of my favorites today. The phenomenon where repeated exposure to a stimulus increases an individual's preference for that stimulus. So the best example is songs. The more you hear a song, the more you like it. The first time you hear a new song, you're like, okay, like it's okay. But then the 10th time you hear that song, you start to really like it. And it's the same for people, right? You start a class, it's really awkward. You don't know anybody in the class, you don't know the teacher, everything feels weird. But the more you become exposed to those people, the more you like them, usually. Okay, it's called the mere exposure effect. The more you try a new food, the more you like it. Uh, this is how advertising works, right? This is why McDonald's and Coca-Cola still advertise. They don't have to advertise, but they do because the mere exposure effect. They want to continuously expose you to their logo and their commercials and their ads. So you like it more and more and more. Right? Of course, there comes a time when you stop liking it, but that's just you. They're still exposing billions of other people to their ads. That's the mere exposure effect. The more you see it, the more you like it. Ethnocentrism, the belief in the inherent superiority of one's own ethnic group or culture, often accompanied by a feeling of contempt for other groups. All right, so you think your culture, your ethnicity is better than all the other groups, all the other cultures or ethnicities. So you could think of World War II would be a wonderful example of ethnocentrism, right? European colonialism in Africa and Asia and South America and the Americas and the entire Earth. Uh, that would be a good example of ethnocentrism, right? The Europeans genuinely saw themselves as superior to everybody else. They're like, we are civilized and they're not. That's ethnocentrism, right? If somebody thinks, you can take it to the smaller level. If somebody thinks shaking hands is a better greeting than bowing, that's ethnocentrism. If you think bowing is better than shaking hands, that's ethnocentrism. Okay, these words are here, and they're not opposites, so it's really strange, but we got collectivism. God, there's so many vocab words, aren't there? We got collectivism, a cultural value that emphasizes the importance of the group or community over individual goals or desires. Right? Collectivist countries are basically East Asian countries are kind of the most collectivist uh, that I'm aware of. So China, Korea, Japan, they kind of value group mentality, uh, bettering the group, making things better for the group, whereas like the United States is very individualistic and not collectivist. They don't really care about the group. Everybody's doing their own thing and they're out for themselves. Individualism versus collectivism. Right. And then there's multiculturalism. And this really shouldn't be here because they're not opposites. You can be collectivist and multicultural, but multiculturalism is the view that promotes the acknowledgement and respect of diverse cultural backgrounds and traditions. You get the picture. Two more terms. Superordinate goals. These are shared goals that require cooperation among individuals or groups, typically overriding smaller or individual conflicts and fostering collaborative efforts. So examples of this would be countries cooperating to address climate change. So even though they're enemies, they can still cooperate to fight climate change. They see a bigger enemy. Different political parties working together during a disaster. So, political parties hate each other, but when there's a tsunami or an earthquake, they're going to have to come together. Rival girls joining forces to organize a charity fundraiser. Look, let's put the two teammates with personal differences uniting to win a championship. Let's put our past behind us and become friends just so we can win the championship. Let's talk about our hatred for each other later. We have a superordinate goal, more than all else. Social trap. Situations in which individuals or groups pursue immediate rewards that later prove to have negative or even catastrophic consequences for a larger community. Best example of this is climate change or environmental pollution. Imagine a community where factories release harmful emissions into the air to maximize short-term profits. Each factory benefits individually by saving money on eco-friendly technology, but collectively the air becomes polluted, harming everyone, including the factory owners themselves. If all factories had cooperated and invested in clean energy, the air would remain healthy for the entire community. However, the pursuit of individual gain leads to a collectively damaging result. So climate change, overfishing, these are social traps. That's a wrap. We'll do the rest in class. Thank you for listening. That's 4.2. Take it easy, everyone. Have a wonderful day.